Australia, the land of kangaroos, koalas, and emus. Our story today is about a war. Not a war between nations, not even a war between humans. No, this is the tale of the Great Emu War of 1932, and it's probably the most peculiar conflict in history. So grab some popcorn, sit back, and let's dive into this feathered fiasco. The year was 1932. Australia was still feeling the aftershocks of World War I and grappling with the Great Depression. Times were tough for everyone, especially for the farmers in Western Australia. They had been promised government land to cultivate wheat, and they needed every grain to count. The government encouraged veterans to take up farming, promising subsidies that, well, didn't quite materialize. So these farmers were already on edge. And then came the emus. Enter the emus. Around 20,000 of these large, flightless birds decided it was time for migration. A migration right through the farmers' wheat fields. To the emus, these fields were a buffet, an all-you-can-eat extravaganza. To the farmers, it was an invasion. Emus, for those unfamiliar, are the second largest living birds by height, native to Australia. They can run at speeds of up to 50 kilometers per hour, about 30 miles per hour, and have a voracious appetite. So, when 20,000 emus descended upon the wheat fields, it was like a scene from a bird-themed apocalypse movie. The emus not only consumed vast amounts of wheat, but they also trampled the crops, causing significant damage. For the struggling farmers, this was a disaster. Now, here's where things get interesting. Remember, many of these farmers were war veterans. And when they saw their crops disappearing, they didn't just get mad, they went to the government for help. Enter Major G.P.W. Meredith of the 7th Heavy Battery of the Royal Australian Artillery. Major Meredith, armed with 2 Lewis machine guns and 10,000 rounds of ammunition, was dispatched to deal with the emu problem. What could go wrong? Right? The Australian Minister of Defence, Sir George Pearce, approved the deployment. He likely saw it as a way to both help the farmers and give the soldiers some target practice. Little did they know, this would be no ordinary military operation. The operation began on November 2nd, 1932. The soldiers set up their machine guns near a group of around 50 emus. The plan was simple: wait for the birds to gather, and then unleash a hail of bullets. As the emus approached, the soldiers opened fire. But the birds were faster and more agile than expected. They scattered in all directions, making it nearly impossible to hit them. These birds weren't just running, they were zigzagging, bobbing, and weaving like feathered boxers. The soldiers quickly found out that hitting a moving emu with a machine gun was no easy task. By the end of the day, only a few emus had been killed. The rest had vanished into the bush, leaving the soldiers scratching their heads. After the initial failure, the soldiers regrouped. They decided to move their operations to a more favorable location where the emus were known to congregate. They also attempted to set up ambushes, hoping to catch larger groups of emus at once. On November 4th, the soldiers set up an ambush near a local dam, where over 1,000 emus were spotted. This time, they waited for the birds to be at close range before opening fire. The results were still disappointing. The gun jammed after only a dozen birds were killed, and the rest scattered, once again evading capture. These emus are smarter than they look. Over the next few days, the soldiers continued their attempts. They managed to kill a few more emus, but the majority always seemed to escape. The birds were proving to be a formidable opponent. Desperate for a win, Major Meredith decided to mount the machine guns on trucks, thinking this would give them the mobility needed to chase down the emus. Spoiler alert, it didn't. The trucks couldn't keep up with the emus' speed and agility, and the rough terrain made aiming nearly impossible. Imagine trying to shoot a bird from a roller coaster. That's what it was like. The emus, it seemed, had the upper hand, or wing, in this case. By November 8, after several days of chasing emus around the outback, Major Meredith called off the operation. The emus had won this round. But the story doesn't end there. After the initial failure, farmers continued to press the government for help. The emus were still a massive problem, and something had to be done. So, a second campaign was launched in late November. This time, soldiers were more prepared. They adjusted their tactics, focusing on areas where emus were densely populated. Over the next few weeks, they managed to kill more birds, around 300, according to reports. But even with the improved strategy, emus continued to outsmart and outrun their human adversaries. By December, it became clear that the emus were not going to be easily defeated. By the end of the campaign on December 10, 1932, the emus had won. The soldiers managed to kill around 1,000 emus, but the rest carried on their merry way, feasting on the crops and frustrating the farmers. Major Meredith later remarked, "If we had a military division with the bullet-carrying capacity of these birds, it would face any army in the world." And so, the Great Emu War ended in defeat for the humans. The emus? They're still out there, strutting through the Australian outback, a living reminder of a time when they took on the army and won. In the aftermath of the Great Emu War, the Australian government had to find other solutions to help the farmers. They eventually installed a bounty system, which proved to be more effective. By placing a bounty on emus, the government encouraged local hunters to control the emu population. This approach, combined with improved fencing and other agricultural measures, helped to alleviate the emu problem. Over time, the emus returned to their normal migration patterns, and the farmers were able to recover their crops. Today, the Great Emu War is remembered with a mix of humor and incredulity. It's a story that highlights the unpredictable challenges of farming in the Australian outback and serves as a reminder that sometimes nature just doesn't play by our rules. The Great Emu War has become a fascinating piece of Australian folklore, often cited as an example of the unexpected and sometimes absurd challenges that can arise in human history. It has been the subject of books, documentaries, and countless internet memes. Yes, the emus have achieved a sort of cult status. They've been depicted in cartoons, comics, and even video games. Their victory over the human military effort has turned them into unlikely heroes, at least very resilient pests. In recent years, there have even been reenactments and celebrations of the Great Emu War. People gather to commemorate this unique event in Australian history, celebrating the resilience of the emus and the persistence of the farmers. So, what can we learn from the Great Emu War? For one, it's a reminder of the importance of adaptability and flexibility in the face of unexpected challenges. Farmers and soldiers who faced the emus had to think on their feet and adapt their strategies, even if they didn't always succeed. Today's farmers use a combination of technology, fencing, and natural deterrents to manage wildlife and protect their crops. Lessons of the past have informed modern agricultural practices, helping farmers to coexist with nature more effectively. Environmental scientists and wildlife managers also take lessons from the Great Emu War. It underscores the importance of understanding animal behavior and ecology when designing strategies to manage wildlife populations. The emus, for their part, continue to roam the Australian outback, symbol of resilience and adaptability. They are an integral part of Australia's natural heritage, and their story is a testament to the unpredictable and often humorous side of human history. So next time you see an emu, give it a nod of respect. After all, it's not every day you meet a bird that bested an army. And remember, history is full of unexpected stories. Sometimes, the underdog, or underbird, come out on top. Thanks for joining us on this journey through the Great Emu War of 1932. It's a story that reminds us of the humor and resilience in the face of adversity. If you enjoyed this tale, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more fascinating historical content. Till next time, keep exploring the past.